In this lesson, we're going to learn what equivalent fractions are and how to tell if two fractions are equivalent to each other. So what are equivalent fractions? They're fractions that have different numbers but still represent the same value or the same amount. So if we look at these rectangles here, we can see that 2 out of the 3 rectangles are shaded in. So we can write this fraction as 2/3. Now let's see what happens if we draw a line down the middle. Now we have 6 boxes and 4 out of the 6 are shaded in. But notice that it still represents the same amount. We haven't increased or decreased the size of the shaded part. So we could say that the 2/3 is still equal or equivalent to 4/6. So, how do we know if the fractions are equivalent? One way is that if we multiply or divide the numerator and denominator of one fraction by the same number and it's equal to the other fraction, then those fractions are equivalent. So let's see what that means. These are the same fractions that we had in our first example, so we already know that they are equivalent. If we multiply the 2 in the numerator of the first fraction by 2, it will give us 4 in the numerator of the other fraction. And the same in the denominator. If we multiply that 3 times 2, we get 6. So notice if we multiply the numerator and denominator of that first fraction by 2, and that's very important, we have to multiply by the same number, it gives us the 4/6 that we see in the other fraction. So they are equivalent. Let's look at another example. Here we have 9/12 and 3/4. And the goal here is to try to see if there's a number that we can multiply or divide the first fraction by that will give us the second fraction. So let's see, we have a 9 in the numerator of the first fraction and a 3 in the second fraction. Well, if we divide by 3, 9 divided by 3 will give us the 3 in the other fraction. And if we divide the denominator by 3, 12 divided by 3 gives us 4 as well. So if we divide both parts, the numerator and denominator of the first fraction by 3, it does give us the second fraction. So that's how we know they are equivalent. Here's a different way for us to tell if the fractions are equivalent. It involves using what we call cross products. If the cross products are equal, then the fractions are equivalent. So what's a cross product? We get a cross product when we multiply the two numbers that are on a diagonal from each other. For example, the 3 and the 4 here are on a diagonal, on a slant from each other. If we multiply the 3 times 4, we get 12. So that's the cross product of that part of the fractions. And then we do the same thing going the other way. We multiply the 2 and 6 that are on a diagonal from each other. That's the other cross product. So 2 times 6 also gives us 12. So both of the cross products are equal to 12. That tells us that the fractions are equivalent. Let's try it with this one. First we multiply the 12 times 3. That gives us 36 for that cross product. If we go in the other direction, 8 times 4 gives us 32. 32 and 36 are not equal to each other. We got two different numbers. So that means that these fractions are not equivalent. So just to review, equivalent fractions are fractions that have different numbers but represent the same value. Multiplying or dividing the numerator and denominator, both parts of one fraction by the same number, equals the other fraction, and the cross products of equivalent fractions are equal. So we have those two different ways of testing to see if the fractions are equivalent.